This country was built on a distinctly American work ethic, but today, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries, and with that, we sent away good jobs and diminished our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make a variety of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more. All made right here in the USA, from growing the cotton and adding the final touches. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs for seamsters, cutters, and factory workers in towns and cities across the United States. And it's about more than an income. Jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.
You're listening to DNA ID, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Citizen Detective, and Campus Killings. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
On October 24, 1985, duck hunters were walking through a field within a wetlands area next to Mowry Avenue in Newark, Alameda County, California. This was a remote location at the time, about 2 miles from I-880. The hunters came upon some bones lying on the ground, and these weren't animal bones. The skull was distinctly human. Authorities summoned to the scene listed in the original incident report as a field west of the Southern Pacific Railroad tracks and east of Able Auto, which was an auto wrecking yard located on Mowry Avenue. There they collected the skeletonized remains of a white female. According to the FBI's VICAP alert seeking information on the case, this Jane Doe was nearly skeletonized, presumably meaning that she had some residual flesh that had not entirely decomposed. Measurements of the skeleton indicated that the woman was 5'6" to 5'8" inches tall. No identification, clothing, or shoes were found with the Jane Doe, who became known as Mowry Avenue Jane Doe. However, a clump of reddish brown shoulder-length hair was collected along with the remains. And Mowry Avenue Jane Doe did have ample jewelry and accessories. Here's what was found, all listed in NamUs as on the body. 2 yellow plastic barrettes. On her left hand, a white metal ring with a pink stone, surrounded by small white stones. Also on her left hand, a white metal ring with a design on both sides that could be either the number 69 or the zodiac sign for Cancer. A Timex wristwatch with black strap, and metal and red and orange glass dangly earrings with a red flower design. There were some differing opinions among various forensic anthropologists about the suspected age of the woman. Initially, NamUs listed her estimated age as adult, pre-age 40. The FBI's information reflects that anthropologists put her age at 25 to 36. And the DNA Doe Project has an even smaller age range of 30 to 36. Often in Doe cases where there are skeletonized remains, determinations as to cause of death can be difficult. Well, not here. It was immediately apparent what had killed this young woman: multiple gunshots. There are reports out there that Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was shot in the head, but police declined to confirm that specific location on the body for me. All they will say is that she was shot multiple times. There are diverging estimates as to how long Mowry Avenue Jane Doe had been dead when the hunters found her. Initial estimates were that she died approximately 6 months prior to being found. The FBI's information widens this time frame to 2 months to 1 year. I was told that it is believed that Jane Doe was killed where she was found. There's no evidence that she was dumped from a vehicle, meaning she was likely marched into the field and shot. I asked about any ballistics evidence recovered at the scene and was told the following. Quote, ballistic evidence was recovered from the crime scene and contemporary ballistic forensic examinations were completed. However, no specific investigative leads have been uncovered. So the investigators declined to comment on what the trajectories have told them about the type of weapon used. That, and where on the body Jane Doe was shot, are seemingly being held back as information that would be known by a suspect should one come to light. What's interesting to me is the fact that Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was found nude, yet she was wearing her jewelry and watch. Presumably, her captor stripped her of her clothing after she was killed. It's hard to believe someone would have been brazen enough to walk a naked woman into a field and shoot her there. That might indicate that it was felt her clothing could help identify her, or the suspect. Jane Doe's remains were analyzed by forensic anthropologists who attempted to glean all the information they could from her bones. One notable defect that could help identify Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was that she was missing her 2 bottom front teeth. These were lost ante-mortem and in fact had been missing for a long time. The FBI flyer about this case says Mowry Avenue Jane Doe had been missing her teeth for long enough that other teeth had moved in to partially fill in the gap. Mowry Avenue Jane Doe's remains, including her skull, were photographed in detail, and then she was cremated. Her jewelry and accessories and hairs were retained in evidence. Detectives scoured missing persons reports all around the area and found none that matched the details of Jane Doe. Bulletins to other agencies went unanswered. Jane Doe remained known only by the location where she was found, rather than who she was. I don't have any information on what was done over the years to progress Mowry Avenue Jane Doe's case. There wasn't a heck of a lot to go on other than the ballistics, which, as you heard, do not seem to have led anywhere. Around 2018, Newark, California detective Todd Noby reopened the case. He created a NamUs profile for Mowry Avenue Jane Doe on November 6, 2018, using all the information they had about her, which was not a lot. In 2020, a sketch of what Mowry Avenue Jane Doe might have looked like, complete with barrettes and earrings, was done by artist Kim Parkhurst. Then, in 2021, NamUs released new artistic renderings of Mowry Avenue Jane Doe. George Molina of the Texas Department of Public Safety is a forensic imaging specialist who used the photos of Mowry Avenue Jane Doe's skull to create a 3D model and built upon that to bring her face to life. The front-facing and sideways images released by NamUs were the result. But it wasn't enough. Behind the scenes, Detective Noby was attempting to turn to DNA, of which he seemingly had 0. As I mentioned, Jane Doe had been cremated. Any hopes of obtaining DNA from her remains were nil. The only thing he had left was her hair. And here's where Estrella Labs came in. You'll recall from other episodes that Estrella Labs has developed technology to obtain DNA from rootless hairs. And that's what they did here. They developed a snip profile from Mowry Avenue Jane Doe from the clump of hair that, thank goodness, was still in evidence. Then, in 2020, the DNA Doe Project took up the case. Its volunteer genealogists went to work entering the SNP profile for Jane Doe into GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. Their progress reports indicated that on GEDmatch, a top match of 177 centimorgans was found. In that database, Mowry Avenue Jane Doe had 8 relatives, sharing more than 40 centimorgans of DNA with her. But her Family Tree DNA match was better, way better. In that database, there was a relative who shared 485 centimorgans of DNA with her, statistically most likely to be a great-great-aunt, uncle, niece or nephew, a half-first cousin, or a first cousin once removed. I was told by a family member that the person found in the database was a sister of Jane Doe's mother, an aunt. This relationship does not correlate with just 485 centimorgans of DNA in common. It seems much more likely that the relative was a half-aunt, and even that occurs only about 4% of the time, according to DNA Painter. But in any event, this was a great starting point. In theory, it meant that to identify Mowry Avenue Jane Doe, they had to build out her tree to the second great-grandparent level, and they would possibly be able to place her somewhere in that tree. But it was not going to be that easy. In May of 2022, the DNA Doe Project update revealed that Jane Doe's matches in the databases were firmly rooted in the Midwest United States, but they still didn't know who she was. It took a lot more work and narrowing down based on public records, birth records, newspaper articles and obituaries, census records, and so on, for the DNA Doe Project to identify the suspected mother of Mowry Avenue Jane Doe. Her maiden name was Marian Marie Helms. She was from a small town in Missouri near the Kansas border called Lamar. Okay, stay with me here as I try to relay all the information we know about this family to whom Mowry Jane Doe somehow belongs. Marian Marie Helms, who went by Marie, had passed away, but her obituary was very detailed and listed the names of her surviving children, all of whom were accounted for living or dead. According to information in her obituary, Marian had 6 children: Jean, also known as Winfred, Robert, Lois, Janet, James, and Ruth. Now, this obituary list of children was crucially important to the genealogists researching the family because only 5 of the children were documented on public birth records as being born to Marian and her husband Winfred Thorson. The 6th child, Ruth, was listed as a survivor in Marian's obituary, but it turned out had been adopted out at 1 month old. This is where it gets interesting. Ruth was adopted as a baby in Texas. She always knew she was adopted, but not until about 2001, when she was diagnosed with a potentially hereditary aggressive cancer, did she seek to pierce her adoption records to find her birth parents. Apparently, this can be permissible in exigent circumstances such as illness. Working with a search angel in 2003, Ruth learned that her biological mother was a woman in Missouri named Marian Marie Helms. Marian had given birth to Ruth at a home for unwed mothers in Texas in 1949. So Ruth reconnected with her birth mother Marian and newfound half-siblings and went to meet with them in Kansas. Marian confirmed for her that she had given Ruth up for adoption prior to her marriage when she was a teenager. Ruth and Marian had a good relationship until Marian's death. She died on December 23, 2013, in Wichita, Kansas, at the age of 81, and was buried in Barton, Missouri. Then, when the DNA Doe Project was researching Mowry Avenue Jane Doe's heritage and traced her back to her suspected mother, Marian Marie Helms, they saw Ruth's name in Marian's obituary. So the DNA Doe Project recommended to the Newark, California investigators that they reach out to Ruth and ask her to do a DNA test to gather more data on who Mowry Avenue Jane Doe might be. When Ruth answered the phone, she was skeptical of the man on the other end claiming to be a detective from California. She hung up and contacted her local sheriff's office and asked them to verify the contact from Newark. It was legitimate. The Newark detectives requested her DNA. All of Ruth's new half-siblings on her suspected biological mother Marian's side had declined the requests for DNA. But Ruth agreed. Her local police sent some officers over to collect buccal swabs and sent them to California. When the test results came back, they showed that Ruth and Mowry Avenue Jane Doe shared DNA consistent with being half-siblings on their maternal side. This confirmed that Marian was almost certainly Jane Doe's mother, just as she was Ruth's mother. They were half-sisters. But no one had any idea who Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was. Long before Marian was reunited with Ruth in 2003, Marian had admitted to her family that she had given one baby up for adoption. One baby. That baby was Ruth, whom Marian acknowledged as her own when Ruth contacted her in 2003. She never mentioned giving a second baby up for adoption. So who was Mowry Avenue Jane Doe? We still don't know.
Missions to Mars, driverless cars, AI chatbots. Feels like we're already living in the future. Well, Robinhood is built for the future of trading. Robinhood's intuitive design makes trading seamless. Spot opportunities and take control of your trades with tools like screeners, simulated returns, and Strategy Builder. On Robinhood, traders have access to hundreds of popular stocks and ETFs, 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, so you can keep up with today's fast-paced markets. You can now even trade stocks and crypto all in one place with the new desktop platform, Robinhood Legend. The future of trading is fast, powerful, and precise. Experience it now on Robinhood. Investing is risky. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Trading during extended hours involves additional risks. Cryptocurrency services are offered through an account with Robinhood Crypto LLC, NMLS ID 1702840. Robinhood Crypto is licensed to engage in virtual currency business activity by the New York State Department of Financial Services.
When it comes to Father's Day, dads want steak. And the experts at Omaha Steaks are making it easy for you to deliver uncompromising quality with gifts that are sure to make his day. Plus, get an extra $35 off with code THANKSDAD when you shop at omahasteaks.com today. But don't wait. Father's Day is June 15th. Shop now at omahasteaks.com and get an extra $35 off with code THANKSDAD. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details.
American Giant makes great clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, and more right here in the U.S. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, code STAPLE20.
Let's go through what Ruth has been able to learn about her own experience, as it is informative for us in making presumptions about Mowry Avenue Jane Doe. Ruth's daughter Jennifer has done a lot of research on this case. She and her mother were taken aback when the California investigators came calling, asking about a missing family member. They knew nothing about Mowry Avenue Jane Doe. All Marian's siblings were dead, so there was no one living who might recall another adopted-out baby. Ruth was born at a Nazarene church-run home for unwed mothers called the Rest Cottage in Pilot Point, Texas, in June 1949. Marian was sent to this home from Missouri when she was pregnant. This was very common at the time when women and girls were pregnant and unmarried. In fact, I found an article in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram observing the 50th anniversary of the Rest Cottage's establishment in 1903. The article read, quote, "About 5,000 women and their babies have been cared for since the home was founded. A nominal fee is charged to those women who are able to pay, but no girl is refused admittance to the home. Almost all women who come to Rest Cottage want their babies to be placed for adoption. A record is kept of every child placed by the institution, but no mother will ever know the eventual home of her baby. The institution is licensed by the State Department of Public Welfare and maintains a trained social worker who places babies for adoption." Marian told Ruth that once she was born, Marian stayed with her for a month at Rest Cottage, and then Ruth was adopted by a Texas family and Marian returned to Missouri. Marian then got married in 1950. All of her children from that time on were documented offspring from that marriage to Winfred Thorburn. When Ruth found out that she had another very likely half-sister who was unidentified, she was shocked. She looked at the images and reconstructions of Mowry Avenue Jane Doe sent to her by the investigators. Quote, "I didn't know she existed," Ruth told TV station KTVU. "It was just the strangest thing. I was amazed. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God, she looks like I did when I was younger, much younger." She also had a lot of characteristics facial with kind of a long face and a pointy chin of our birth mothers, she said, referring to Marian Marie Helms. By the way, before she died, Marian told Ruth that her father was a local older boy named Bernard, whom Marian had liked and clearly had a sexual encounter with as an unwed teen in the 1940s. The result was a temporary stay at the Texas home for unwed mothers and baby Ruth. Okay, but who is Ruth's half-sister, Marian Marie Helms' daughter, Mowry Avenue Jane Doe? To try to solve that riddle, let's look at what we know about her birth mother, Marian Marie Helms. Marian Marie Helms and her twin sister, Mary Louise Helms, were born on January 22, 1932, in Lamar, Missouri. Their father, Pearl, was 46, and their mother, Margaret Dixon Helms, was 38. Marian had 8 siblings, including twin brothers Floyd and Lloyd, and her own twin, Mary Louise. She and Mary were the second youngest. Tragically, Mary Louise only survived for 2 months. Using what we know about the timeline of Marian's early life growing up in the Lamar, Missouri area, near the Kansas border, we can make an educated guess as to when Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was born. Ruth was born to 17-year-old unwed Marian in 1949. Marian married Winfred Thorburn in 1950 at age 18, and their son was born in January 1951, meaning he was conceived sometime in approximately March 1950. So, Marian could not realistically have had another baby between Ruth, born on June 5, 1949, and her son conceived within her marriage in March 1950. What this strongly suggests is that she gave birth to Mowry Avenue Jane Doe prior to giving birth to Ruth in 1949. If we presume that Marian got pregnant sometime between the ages of 14 and 16, that means that Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was born between 1946 and 1948. And we may be able to narrow this window of time down further. This article ran in the Golden City Herald from Golden City, Missouri on August 7, 1949. I want to make it clear here that this article is a horrifically unacceptable and shameful example of how judgmental small-town communities and the male journalists that cover them could be toward women and girls in the 1940s. It's incredibly cringy and exploitative, but I'm going to read it anyway because it does provide some valuable information about when Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was born and the possible circumstances of that birth. Here goes. And by the way, the Mary Helms the article discusses is Marian Marie Helms, Ruth and Jane Doe's mother. The article is titled Marie Helms to Chillicothe. Judge Brown spent a great deal of time Monday on the case of Mary Marie Helms. His careful investigation finally resulted in sentencing her to 1 year in the reform school at Chillicothe. The 15-year-old girl appeared in court with her parents and Reverend Elrod of the Nazarene Church. She seemed to have no idea of the seriousness of her position and was more or less unconcerned during the testimony. It was brought out that Marie had run away from home once in March, in April, in May, and the last time on July 12th. It was this July trip that resulted in her parents signing the warrant for her arrest. Sheriff Bassett located Marie at Golden City, where she had been seen from Saturday to Wednesday in the company of several boys. When brought into the prosecuting attorney's office, she admitted to the latter in the presence of the sheriff, and she had indulged in sexual intercourse at 3 different times with 3 different boys. When the judge asked Marie about this in court Monday, she denied she had made such a statement. She insisted she had been guilty of sexual dereliction but once. Marie's school record and a letter from Superintendent Ted Windies in regard to her actions at school came in for close attention from the judge. For the past few years, she hadn't been promoted but simply assigned to the upper grade, the school authorities feeling it not wise to leave her behind as a companion for younger children. The sheriff is expected to leave with her for Chillicothe on Tuesday. Okay, so you heard all that. Again, not endorsing any of this victim shaming, but what this article tells us is that Marian was likely sexually active in the summer of 1947 and possibly for months before that time, and she was sent off to Chillicothe, a city in Missouri, to reform school. The sentence that interests me is, quote, she had no idea of the seriousness of her position, end quote. That could be referring to the fact that she was under arrest and imminently being sent to juvie, or it could mean that she was expecting. Back then, out-of-wedlock pregnancies were danced around and not addressed in frank terms. The judge sentenced Marian to a full year at the reform school. So there are 2 options for what happened. 1, she was already pregnant when she went there, meaning she would have given birth anywhere from September 1947 to April 1948. Or she got pregnant at reform school. I don't want to think about the circumstances under which that could have happened, but that would mean she would have given birth a little later, possibly as late as July 1948. We know Marian again got pregnant in September 1948, since she gave birth to Ruth in June of 1949. So presumably, she gave birth to Mowry Avenue Jane Doe at least 2 months before then, meaning July 1948 is the latest she could have given birth. Just as an aside here, think back to the ring found on Mowry Avenue Jane Doe's remains. It appears to be a zodiac Cancer symbol. People born in July are typically Cancers, but Cancer is also the zodiac symbol for anyone born June 21st to July 22nd. If Marian did have a baby within that time period, June 21 to July 22, 1948, then simple math tells us that she did indeed get pregnant while at the reform school. She was sent to the school in the first week of August, 1947. There was always the remote possibility that Marian had already given birth to Mowry Avenue Jane Doe before she was sent to Chillicothe, but she was pretty young if that was the case, since she was just 15 when she was sent away. She would have had to have been pregnant at 14 or younger. The theory that Marian was already pregnant in August 1947 is supported by some paperwork that Ruth was given about her mother's background when she pierced her adoption. One paper read, about her mother, some time was spent at a state training school in Chillicothe, Missouri. We do not have information on the length of time or the reason, other than, at the age of 15, Marian ran away from home. Her parents feared trouble, and it seems that confinement in the training school was for a period of time as a result, end quote.
Every day, predators are targeting children and teens online. The Department of Homeland Security's Know to Protect campaign provides resources to combat online child exploitation and abuse. Learn how you can help protect our kids online and join the fight. Visit knowtoprotect.gov so together we can stop online child exploitation. That's KNOW, the number 2, protect.gov.
When it comes to Father's Day, dads want steak. And the experts at Omaha Steaks are making it easy for you to deliver uncompromising quality with gifts that are sure to make his day. Plus, get an extra $35 off with code THANKSDAD when you shop at omahasteaks.com today. But don't wait. Father's Day is June 15th. Shop now at omahasteaks.com and get an extra $35 off with code THANKSDAD. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details.
Here in America, work is in trouble. We've offshored our manufacturing, sent away good jobs, and lost so much ability to make things. American Giant is a company that's pushing back against this tide. They make high-quality clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more right here in the USA. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, promo code STAPLE20.
The DNA Doe Project had a pretty big update on this case that they recently publicized. They have identified Mowry Avenue Jane Doe's birth father. His identity has not been released by the DDP, but I was told by the Newark police that he likely was Francis Dwayne Daniels, who went by Dwayne. Digging into Dwayne, I learned that he was born on December 5, 1930, in Bedford, Iowa, to parents Francis Everson Daniels and Hazel Bell Stickelman. Dwayne's occupation on the 1950 census is listed as a clerk and/or tool grinder. He died on December 9, 1988, in Wayne, Michigan, where it appeared he had lived for some time. His obituary reads, quote, Dwayne grew to maturity in the Bedford community where he attended the public school and the Christian church. He was united in marriage to Shirley Ann Burns, and to them were born Stephen and Larry. He later was married to Joyce Arlene Point, and to them were born Randall and Jeffrey, and he adopted Gloria and Debbie. He was employed as a heavy equipment operator as long as his health permitted. End quote. Dwayne married Shirley Burns of Bedford in December 1949 at age 19. The two were married in Nodaway County, Missouri. There's that connection to Missouri. If we are correct and Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was born in 1948, then Dwayne must have been in Missouri by the time Marian got pregnant sometime in 1947, because there is no known connection of Marian to Iowa. I have to say here that the DNA Doe Project is not 100% certain that it is Dwayne and not his younger brother, who was Jane Doe's father. But Dwayne was only 16 when Marian likely got pregnant. His brother, James Ralph Daniels, was only about 14. I didn't see any information on Ancestry or in newspapers.com putting James Ralph in Missouri in the mid-1940s, although he did marry there in 1952. Because of Dwayne's marriage license, we know he was there in 1949. Note that the biological sons listed in Dwayne's obituary, Larry, Stephen, Randall, and Jeffrey, would all be half-siblings to Mowry Avenue Jane Doe. However, there is no certainty whatsoever that Dwayne was ever aware that he had fathered a child with Marian Helms. And Francis Dwayne Daniels being Mowry Avenue Jane Doe's father, the person who impregnated teenage Marian, almost raises more questions than it answers. All records of him in Missouri that I could find are in Nodaway County, where he married in 1949. That county is way up at the top of Missouri, near his home state of Iowa. It's nowhere near where Marian was, in Barton County, all the way near the southwest corner of the state. We can't find the connection between the two teenagers. Chillicothe, where Marian was at reform school, is a lot closer to Nodaway County, but it's still about 4 counties away. And presumably the goal of the reform school was to keep her away from boys. There is another option, which is that Marian was not at the reform school in Chillicothe nearly as long as the judge sentenced her. She was supposed to go for a year, but who knows, anything could have happened. Schools closed down due to lack of funding, disease, and so on. It truly is a puzzle, one that even professional top-notch genealogists like the ones at the DNA Doe Project have been unable to figure out. And then there's the question of what happened to Marian and Dwayne's baby. It seems very unlikely that Dwayne's family raised Mowry Avenue Jane Doe, as his identification has not led to her identification. He has no sisters. His only documented sister died in infancy. So Jane Doe couldn't have been raised by that family under a false pretense. And it also seems very unlikely that any of Marian's older siblings or her parents might have raised her daughter as their own, because not a single person in the family knew about the child. This from KTVU, which worked with the investigators in Newark, California, where Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was found, to release an expose about the case. Quote, Investigators said they think Jane Doe may also have been adopted in the 1940s, like Ruth Ellis, causing her to end up in California, end quote. The DNA Doe Project has stated they believe Jane Doe could have been adopted out in Texas, Missouri, Kansas, or Oklahoma. They cannot search birth records in multiple states when they don't even have a specific time frame of when the baby was born. And who's to say that the name on the birth certificate would be Marian's maiden name, Helms? She could have used an alias, the name of a relative, the name Daniels, anything. Or someone else could have altered the birth certificate. There's no way to know where to start looking. One clue could be in the words of the documentation that Ruth's adopted parents were given about Ruth's birth mother. I read it earlier. Remember that it said, quote, her parents feared trouble, and it seems that confinement in the training school for a period of time was the result. Well, Jennifer, Ruth's daughter, pointed out to me that, quote, back then, girls who got pregnant out of wedlock were girls who got in trouble. So did she go to Chillicothe? And if she was pregnant while she was there, where did Chillicothe send girls who were expecting? Many homes for unwed mothers were around that area. I read a couple articles describing Kansas City as the adoption hub back then, due to the location, interstate, trains, and so on. Well, just searching for home for unwed mothers in newspapers in 1940s Kansas City, Missouri, I found this ad, quote, May Marshall's Home for Unwed Mothers, legal adoption and expenses paid, Box 186, Edmond, Oklahoma. In fact, Rest Cottage, where Ruth was born, ran a similar ad in the papers for years. Quote, unmarried expectant mothers are offered complete maternity care and licensed adoption services through Rest Cottage Pilot Point. I can't help wondering how regulated these adoption houses were and whether they kept reliable records. I'm sure some of the search angels out there can speak to that. This all raises another significant question. Marian had been honest with her family about giving one baby up for adoption in her teenage years. We know that baby to be Ruth. Why then would she keep the second baby, born first, a secret? She told Ruth all about being at Rest Cottage with her newborn baby girl for a month, but never said anything about having done it all before. Is it possible she didn't know about the first baby? Let me explain. In the paperwork Ruth received as an adult reviewing her own adoption records, both her original and her adoptive certificates were included. In her original birth certificate, which had Marian Marie Helms listed as her mother, she noted something about the personal information filled out by Marian. The birth certificate asked how many other children the mother had. Marian's answer was 0. But it also asked about how many stillbirths after 20 weeks she had experienced, and her answer was 1. What? A stillborn baby born prior to Ruth? Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was certainly not born stillborn. How to reconcile this information? Well, we've all heard of it happening. Unmarried women and girls giving birth and being misled as to their baby's survival. Did the Home for Unwed Mothers, wherever Marian gave birth, lie to her and tell her that her baby was dead? Why would they do that if she was going to adopt it out anyway? Well, maybe she wasn't. Maybe she was refusing and the decision was taken away from her. Or maybe she was told the baby was deceased so that her parental rights were terminated and the baby could be placed in a pricey, undocumented private adoption using a falsified birth certificate. I know this seems outlandish, but it definitely happened back in the day. This is from a 2015 article from ABC News. Quote, Christy Hughes is among the roughly 200 adults who have come to be known as the Hicks babies, newborns who were illegally sold into black market adoptions by Dr. Thomas Hicks between 1950 and 1965. Hicks would tell the women he would find adoptive parents for their children. In other reported cases, he lied to the birth mothers, telling them their newborn baby had died. Hicks would then secretly sell the newborn for $800 to $1,000 each and included a forged birth certificate with the adoptive parents' names on it. End quote. Again, it's far-fetched, something out of the movies, except that it happened. And if it also happened to Mowry Avenue Jane Doe, it would explain why Marian never told another living soul about giving birth to another baby, and why she filled out that she had a stillborn baby. She didn't know. So where does this leave us? Exactly where we started. Marian Helms and all of her siblings who may have had information are deceased. The man identified by the DNA Doe Project as Mowry Avenue Jane Doe's likely father, Dwayne, is deceased. And so Mowry Avenue Jane Doe, Marian and Dwayne's daughter and Ruth's half-sister, remains unidentified. She was almost certainly given up for adoption, but the lack of concrete information about where and when, and the possibility that no real names were used, has stalled her case. Which is a shame. Not just because everyone deserves a name and to know where they came from, but because someone murdered Mowry Avenue Jane Doe, and until we know who she was when she was alive, it's unlikely her case will be solved. Note that if we're correct and Mowry Avenue Jane Doe was born in 1947 or the first half of 1948, she died when she was approximately 37 years old. She lived somewhere, under some name, for nearly 4 decades, until that fateful day when someone shot her. I was told by the Newark PD that Jane Doe's homicide inquiry is a cold case, but one they would very much like to solve. In fact, the agency is the one who brought this case to my attention. In July 2024, the Lamar, Missouri Police Department issued the following statement about the case, quote, "Recently, the Lamar Police Department was contacted by the Newark, California Police Department in reference to an unsolved 1985 homicide. The victim there has never been identified, and recent DNA genealogy testing links the victim to the Lamar, Missouri area. DNA identified the victim as a descendant of Marian Marie Helms Thorburn Richardson, who was born in Lamar in 1932 and is now deceased. It is likely that the victim was placed for adoption as an infant, possibly in the late 1940s. The Lamar Police Department has been asked to share this information locally in hopes that someone may know something. If anyone has any information about the adoption or the identity of the victim, please reach out to the Newark Police Department at 510-578-4956. Or if you want to speak to someone locally, feel free to contact the Lamar Police Department at 417-682-3546 and speak to Chief Joe Moore." End quote. So the case of Mowry Avenue Jane Doe's identity may be solved by a tip, but it could also possibly be solved if a descendant of Mowry Avenue Jane Doe takes a commercial DNA test and uploads and opts in. Since we know Mowry Avenue Jane Doe died in her 30s, it seems very likely that she had children, and they probably have children. The DNA Doe project will continue to monitor matches that appear in the databases, and perhaps the right one will come along. So please, for the sake of Mowry Avenue Jane Doe and others like her, test, upload, and opt in. Otherwise, her case will remain one of the few examples that even forensic genealogy has its limits. This is the last Doe episode of 2024. Next week will be a regular DNA ID episode, and after that will be the 2024 year in review, the final episode before our winter break. Recently, I let listeners know about a new benefit available to them called an AbJack Insider subscription that's available through Apple Podcasts. An AbJack Insider subscription will give listeners ad-free access to every bit of DNA ID content published, both past episodes and future episodes. It will also give you benefits like early access and bonus content. Head over to Apple Podcasts and click on the DNA ID show page or the AbJack Entertainment channel to start a free trial. Thanks for listening to this episode of DNA ID. If you'd like to listen to the show ad-free and help support the show in the process, please head over to patreon.com/DNAID. And if you're interested in some fun DNA ID merch, visit the store at customizedgirl.com/s/DNAID podcast. To contact the show, please email us at dnaidpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on social media at DNAID Podcast on Instagram, at DNAID Podcast on Twitter, or on Facebook at facebook.com/DNAID Podcast. Finally, if you want to visit our website, go to DNAIDpodcast.com. You'll be able to get all the episodes of the show, leave comments on episodes that I can respond to, and you can even leave voicemails. You'll get all the latest news about the show and important updates. Find links to our social media, merch, and a lot more. It's really your one-stop shop for everything DNA ID. DNA ID is written, researched, and hosted by me, Jessica Betancourt. It's produced by me and Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Music by Connor Betancourt. Check out our other collaborative podcasts, Scene of the Crime, Missing Persons, and Beyond Bizarre True Crime.
When it comes to Father's Day, some things never change. Dads want steak. And the experts at Omaha Steaks are making it easy for you to deliver uncompromising quality with gifts that are sure to make his day. Plus, get an extra $35 off with code THANKSDAD when you shop omahasteaks.com today. We know, being your dad means he already has everything he could want. But just picture the look on his face when he sees those extra-aged USDA-certified tender steaks. juicy air-chilled chicken, beefy burgers, and more. With carefully curated gift packages from America's original butcher, it's never been easier to show everyone why you're Dad's favorite. And every bite is 100% guaranteed to bring a thrill to the king of the grill. Shop now at omahasteaks.com and get an extra $35 off with code THANKSDAD. But don't wait. Father's Day is June 15th. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details.
These days, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries. And with that, we sent away good jobs and our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make all kinds of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs in towns and cities across the country. And jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.